For the introduction, my name is Andrew White. I'm the GIS manager at SCORE. I'm here to talk to you about why SCORE is involved with GIS and how we are trying to help you guys access it. So we'll fly through our kind of background presentation real quick. I want to start with our mission statement. We seek to lessen the impact of disasters on communities and citizens by planning and coordinating statewide resilience, long-term disaster recovery, and hazard mitigation. And that does lend itself to bringing you into our history. We always start with 1989, Hurricane Hugo. We went almost 30 years until we had the next major disaster that warranted federal funding. We lost a lot of institutional knowledge. In 2015, my office was created as the Disaster Recovery Office. It was a temporary office to assist with the housing recovery after the floods of 2015. We experienced additional disasters in 2016 and 2018. In 2018, the Floodwater Commission was established in order to kind of get ahead of the future problems that the state might face. One of those recommendations was to create a state office of resilience, which began formally in 2021 with funding. And in 2023, we published the first statewide resilience plan. So one of the big things that our office had to do when we got started was defining resilience. To us, it's the ability of communities, economies, and ecosystems to anticipate, absorb, recover, and thrive when presented with environmental change and natural hazards. So that's all the agency background I have for you. There's a lot of great resources on our website if you want to follow up there. But now going into what does GIS look like at SCORE? And GIS is Geographic Information Systems. So that's any data that has a spatial component. So any data that you can place on a map, basically. This is the type of data we considered in the resilience plan. We did consider the entire watershed of South Carolina, which goes from Georgia to Virginia. That water flows downstream. So the things happening in Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia do impact what's happening in South Carolina. We looked at all the natural background data, whether it's soil types or land cover, but we also brought into it the human data. So that map on the bottom left there is data from the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office of South Carolina. And that is showing where population is growing in the dark blue and where population is actually declining in the dark red. We don't only look at spatial data here. That graph on the bottom right is trying to show how what is currently maybe a severe event for a short time frame is only going to be more rain in the future, and trying to communicate that data. Our last speaker did a great job of it, so I won't hinder on it. Going into kind of the flood-centric focus of our office, we do invest in First Street data. So that map at the top left, it's a bit grainy, I apologize, is flooding in South Carolina, flooding in Columbia, South Carolina, according to the First Street Foundation, which is a flood model that we purchase in addition to using the FEMA floodplain data. If anyone's familiar with Columbia, this area, oh no, I've gone too far. This area that's bright red in the middle of your screen is 5 points. It floods pretty frequently, but it's not in the FEMA floodplain. That's not what that model is built for. And I'll fly through the rest of these maps. If there was data that we could put against our flood data, we did. So that included properties, roadways, solid waste facilities, as well as any other point data we could find. We did evaluate cropland flood exposure and also our social vulnerability on the bottom right. A few other things we work on, conservation prioritization. These are those areas of the state that, as long as they remain open, are the best for mitigating flood risk. So it's those soils that are great at infiltration. It's also those floodplains that if they remain undeveloped, that means there's not kind of human capital at risk. And with that, I'm going to take us to the Resilience Atlas. Hopefully this is a seamless transition. This is designed to just be a public reference map so folks can see the data that we are using and place it in a local context. Let's see, I'll transition over to that page. Can you guys still see my screen, hopefully? It should be the web tool at this point.
I can see it.
Perfect, thank you. So you'll open it up, you'll read this short disclaimer saying that this tool is for planning purposes only. Please identify engineers or planners if you're making decisions based off of this data. But now we're here, we see the broad outline of South Carolina. So you're going to interact with this map, much like the other web tools on the internet that you'll find. You can click and drag your mouse to pan the map. You can use the buttons top left to zoom in and zoom out. You can also use the scroll function on your mouse to zoom in and zoom out. I do want to let you know that you can search specific places. So we can look for Columbia, South Carolina.
If any of you would like to follow along, we have dropped the link to the SCORE Atlas tool in the chat. So you should be able to open it up and follow along if you'd like to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm more than happy to answer questions at a later date if you come up with them later. But we get, in addition to searching for places, we can do specific addresses. So now you guys are going to know exactly where my office is. So 632 Rosewood Drive. It'll zoom you in right to where our office is. I do want to kind of show you one more way to interact with the map. These base maps are great for a lot of things. They're not great for seeing exactly what's on the ground. So there's a button on the top right where you can go pick a different base map. So we'll go to the imagery hybrid, and that gives you a little more kind of local context as to what you're looking at. You'll notice that not all of the layers look good on top of imagery. So if you do need a satellite image, I would recommend making one map with the satellite background and then another map where you use something like the terrain with labels. With that said, I'm going to show you how to interact with the layers of this map. So we do have quite a few categories of layers. We have a temporary category for the Hurricane Helene layers, which includes those roadways that were impacted. We have FEMA IA data. IA data is individual assistance data, so those folks who applied for aid. And this is just a kind of a heat map of where they occurred. We have the FEMA county declarations, so that pink color is the individual assistance. And if we go to the legend, we can see that that yellow is the PA or public assistance. So going through the rest of our layers, we have our cartographic boundary files. So that's anything from cities, towns, and counties to councils of governments to state boundaries. So if you're interested in a specific tract or block group or county subdivision, you can turn them on and zoom to them and make sure that you're talking about the correct place on your map. We have the natural landscape data that we consider very often. We have everything from watersheds. So this is the state watershed going all the way to North Carolina. And if you expand these layers, you'll see that there's even more hidden in them. So we have the entire watershed, which we can turn on and off. We also have, if I turn off our cartographic boundary files, you can see a higher resolution with HUC-8s, and then finer and finer. And these are just summary polygons showing you what water is connected to what water based off topography. Flying through watersheds, we do have rivers and lakes that you can turn on and off. Wetlands and runoff curves. These are a thing considered in our statewide conservation plan. The darker blues are those areas where water is more likely to infiltrate, and any of those yellows or light greens are where you would expect water to run off instead. As for the built landscape, let's say that we're analyzing something in Columbia. We have structure footprints that we can load in. We have parcel boundaries that, while not perfect, are pretty good. There's no data behind these parcels, but they're great for representing on a map. We have highway networks that can help you understand, how people travel across this landscape. We have SCDOT evacuation routes. We have some data from SCDOT on primary road flooding and past events. And lastly, I do want to draw our attention to our EMD lifelines. So these are these lifelines that are tied to different FEMA lifelines. So it's everything from restaurants to sports venues to county emergency operations centers. And if you turn them on, you'll see what happens in your area. I think they have like 80 some layers in there, and everything that you could care about if you're doing a hazard mitigation plan. Moving on to our conservation and open space layer, we have everything. There are so many groups working on so much good work in conservation. These are the layers that they use to make their decisions. So we have what is already protected from TNC. We have score conservation priorities, etc. Lastly, I'm going to walk us through the hazard layers. We have everything from the FEMA flood hazard areas to what is actively happening to sea level rise. And I do want to draw our attention to the First Street data. It's where we can see from these advanced models what areas are likely to flood in a 1% storm or a 100-year event. This is great data. It's really helpful to see. If anyone's familiar with Columbia, they'll tell you that this area floods on a Tuesday in the summer. This is the Gills Creek watershed for those folks who were around here in 2015. And then lastly, we have our social indicators. So we, as an office that is largely funded by HUD, use LMI, which is low to moderate income, which are those folks who make 80% or less of the area median income. We also have National Risk Index tracks. South Carolina social vulnerability, red being the most socially vulnerable here. BRIC, which is the South Carolina Baseline Resilience Indicators for Communities. And we have the CDRZs, which are the Community Disaster Resilience Zones. Namitha, tell me if I need to hurry up or anything, but I'll keep going.
I think we're good. We did have one question come up in the chat on, and I'm going to add to this for a little ease, I think. The question was, can you go back to where you can select the base maps? And then the add-on I have for that is, do you have recommendations for which base maps might be the easiest to work with for someone who is new to this platform?
Sure. Good question. So that base map thing is that 4 little boxes in the top right-hand corner underneath the magnifying glass. I quite often use this one near the bottom. It's terrain with labels. It does kind of give you the relief aspect, so you can get some sense of elevation in there. And it's also a nice light background, which a lot of this data has been formatted to look good on a light background. If you're finding that you want slightly more contrast, the dark gray canvas is a favorite in the GIS community. And if you are looking at an area that's closer in, I would recommend one of the imagery based maps. You see how when we're really zoomed out, this imagery is interesting, but it doesn't give you that local context that might be useful if you're face to face with a community. So this is where I would use a satellite image. But they're all good base maps, and largely they share the same data. So it's depending on what you're trying to communicate to your audience.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to start running through these green buttons at the top. We do have some bookmarks. Right now, they're just the basins. If you want to add your own, you can. So let's say that we're really interested in the University of South Carolina. You can add a bookmark, and next time you're in this app, you can go to the bookmarks and it will automatically zoom you to the University of South Carolina. If not, we'll go to the PD Basin, which, as we know, goes all the way to Virginia. I'll swap back out of my imagery. Perfect. All right, moving on to selection. Let's say that we are working on a grant just to identify some tracts. So we don't care about counties as much as just the tracts, and we have to make sure that all of the layers in the kind of lineage of a layer are turned on. So if this box isn't turned on, even though tract is blue, it won't show up. So there we go. Let's say we want to select just a few in Horry County. We'll open up our select tool. We'll select by lasso. You can use any of these, select by rectangle, and then we'll turn the tool on. It's on when it's blue. We can see that we are able to select tracts, and then we'll just draw a really quick polygon. So it's selected everything that my mouse came in contact with. I can zoom to those selected features, and I can actually add those features to a table if I want more data out of them. So I'll add them to the table. There's 3 buttons on the right of every layer that give you more options to interact with that layer. add to table. And that table is hidden at the bottom. And you can look at the tracks that have been selected. Currently, we have 25. After that, you can clear your selection, turn off your select tool, and we'll move to the next. On a lot of the times on these maps, we want to draw the eye to a specific place. So let's say we are in Fountain Inn. Oh, hopefully I can find them quickly. There we go. And we really want to identify the intersection of Knight Street and Main Street. We can use the draw tool super quickly to draw a circle, pick how we want that circle to look, come out to the map, and put it on the map. These are easy to clear. They're easy to move. Let's say we actually prefer a different type. Take it, place it on the map again. We can use these tools on the left to then move these features if we decide we actually want it a little northwest of there. When you're done with those, you can delete them or you can leave them on the map. You can also leave squares, polygons, points, lines, whatever you need for your map. There's an add data tool. I've already taken the liberty of adding some data here, but I want to show you how to go through it. Since I have an ArcGIS Online account, I have some more options than you will. If I were you, I would skip to the Living Atlas option, and I'm just going to search for HIFLD, which is a series of layers put out by DHS. So I see that they have a hurricane evacuation route. Seems interesting. It's loading up. We can add it in. And once you've added it to your add data, you will have to actually add it to the map. But now when we zoom out, it's added all of the hurricane evacuation routes for the whole coast. And we can see where they are in South Carolina. And that's true for income data from the ACS. That's true for any data that you could think of. If you have a link from a different web tool that looks like this, you can take the URL and place it in here under the add data using the URL. It is easiest to use the Living Atlas and ArcGIS Online tools though. That layer went straight to the top of our table of contents here. So it's easy to see. We can also turn it off. If we're trying to get some local context in the way of elevation, let's go into Greenville real quick and follow South Church Street. We'll turn on our elevation profile, which will hopefully load quickly. We can draw a profile. Let's just follow the main street down. And I believe we should see, let's go across the river. We should see a nice dip here. There we go. So now you can see exactly how much higher the middle of Greenville is than the Reedy River that goes straight through it. And you can even export this to an image if you want to understand how your floodplain's profile looks. You can reset that and exit out. If you do have an ArcGIS Online account, there are some additional tools here. I don't think most people on this call have them. So I'll skip this part, but these tools do exist for you if you would like to use them. Last tool we're going to use is the print tool. You just have some options to save the work you're working on. So any layers that you have, any base map work you've done, any sketches or drawings that you've completed, you can capture them with an image, which a lot of people want to take these images and put them in a PowerPoint or print them out and include them in a brief or a report. You can set the title. You can set the paper size, whether you want it portrait or landscape. You can set whether it's a PDF or a PNG. If you're trying to print it out, I would use the PDF. And if you want to put it in a PowerPoint, I would use the PNG. And there are some advanced options where you can give yourself some credit for your work that you've done and some other details. And what that ends up looking like is this. So I made a really quick map of flooding in 5 points. That's the first street data. That's a really quick circle that I placed on the map. And as you can see on the bottom, you have a legend, a scale bar, and a north arrow. I would hesitate to add too many layers because they don't show up well. But if you need a series of a few maps, this is a good way to do it. Very last thing is the external data tools. Our Resilience Atlas is not trying to replace all of the tools in the world. There are so many good tools made by different state agencies, by federal agencies, by nonprofits. and I tried to collect as many as I could here in a searchable database. So let's say you're interested in water, you can search it. Any tools that kind of click with that will pop up and a link will take you to them. You can also see some more columns here. So the entity type, the category. Let's say that we only care about state tools, or we only care about those tools with hazards. We can search hazards, and it will show us anything that's tagged with that. So let's say that the SC Watershed Atlas made by SC DHEC, that link will take us right out, so that we're not kind of replicating too much from the good work that's been done. If there are any tools that you want to see added, this is a dynamic spreadsheet that I can update and keep current. So let me know. But with that, I think the only thing I have left for you is the recommendation to visit our website. We do have a quick start guide. It's 2 pages that walks through what the Resilience Atlas is attempting to do, as well as a 20-minute in-depth walkthrough of what every button does on the Resilience Atlas if you're in need of that. My contact information is there as well. Feel free to reach out.